episode we have to discuss. I am very excited to dive into this episode. As always, there are going to be a ton of spoilers. We are 6 episodes into WandaVision. Let's get into WandaVision episode 6. All the spoilers, we're diving in right now. For me, this episode was about the children. A lot of people said this was a very Pietro-themed episode, but for me, this was Pietro supplying nefariousness, as well as supplying us lots and lots of exposition. To me, this was the beginning of the Young Avengers. This was Tommy and Billy finding their powers, becoming the heroes they're about to become, but I think Young Avengers are going to be what the TV universe builds up to. I think it's going to be even more interesting to see the amount of hours we get with these Young Avengers characters, because we're getting America Chavez in Doctor Strange 2, Kate Bishop in Hawkeye. Obviously, Tommy and Billy are now with us. Doctor Strange 2 looks to be almost as big as Thor 4 in the supporting cast as well as the lead cast. So by the end of next year, the Young Avengers will have enough characters we can start to gather that. And we got a comic book accurate costume for Quicksilver, which was just delightful, which then in turn turned into a almost comic book accurate costume for Speedster, and we got a very comic accurate costume for Wicked. This was a great use of costumes. We've all wanted the Scarlet Witch costume since we saw it a year ago in previs. We've all wanted the screen accurate Vision costume. I loved the rationale for that. I also love that it was plot important. Wanda was a Sokovian fortune teller, but Vision was dressed in the only outfit that was left in his closet. Wanda isn't just manipulating everyone mentally, she also made sure that was all Vision could wear, and that caused a lot of the tension at the start of the episode. Now, tension in sitcoms is usually alleviated through humor. They did that very well in this episode, but there is a growing rift between Vision and Wanda, and that was from the opening of the show. And then it turned into humor because he knows how much she loves that style of wrestling. He knows that's what she wanted. And then it kept being tense because he went off and did his own thing, and she wasn't mentally prepared for that because she's used to being in control. Vision's getting more and more self-aware. But we find out in this episode, Vision doesn't even know who the Avengers are. He's piecing his own life together, which is really, really interesting. Now, this show, I've been saying for a few episodes, is going to be about grief and trauma. They actually said the word trauma quite a bit in this episode. We saw the woman in the outer edges of the city away from Wanda, where there's less control and there's less movement and less action. The single tear falling down her face. All of these people are in trauma when they're not being abated with the opioid of Wanda. I think Wanda thinks she's doing the right thing. And I said that last week, and then this week she talked about the ethics of it, which I thought was a very interesting thing. The ethics of what she's doing, keeping the children. We found out the kids had been in their beds most of the time, or we assume that through Quicksilver's assumption. But now we're seeing that you see people outside of Wanda's control. They're trapped, or incapacitated, they're feeling something, but these people don't have memories of what the reality is until they get snapped out of it. But I think it's all going to be leading to the grief and trauma of Monica and the grief and trauma of Wanda and the manipulation of someone pulling the strings. Now, at this point, I think it's all but certain the decision of Wanda to cause this was her discovering Vision disassembled by Sword. I think Sword are the antagonists here. Hayward certainly is, but I think Sword manipulating Vision, turning him into a weapon, is what caused Wanda to lose it. I don't think they're going to do the Mad Woman syndrome, which is a very tricky thing in the comic books because she's a stronger, better character than sometimes is written. I don't think Mad Woman syndrome is going to be the answer to who our antagonist is, which I'm very grateful. I think she may be an antagonist in Doctor Strange still, but it's going to be better writing than just like, ooh, crazy Wanda, because that's not her character here. She's coping. She's trying to do the right thing. She's worrying about ethics. She's handling the situation as best she can. I think Sword came in, scooped him up, started trying to weaponize him, turning him into whatever, and then Wanda, who was going to be the post-credit scene at the end of Endgame, retrieving his body, then just like snapped. Couldn't handle that much grief. She couldn't handle that much trauma. She wanted to protect herself. She wanted to protect her people. It wasn't offensive, it was defensive. I honestly think that this was all to protect the people of the town in her mind and to protect her self and to protect Vision. So that's where I am with the catalyst for what caused all of this and where I am with the villains. I do think someone's manipulating Wanda. The commercial in this episode, someone feeding off magic. Yo Magic was the yogurt, the Go-Gurt, that commercial was haunting as hell. Was the container where the sustenance was. Like the magic is what you need to survive. I think the shark represents Mephisto or Nightmare, and they're feeding off of the trauma and grief that is being emanated from this dome. I think this tear was really indicative of what was going on. I think Vision not knowing what's going on. I think everyone being in a paralyzed state. I honestly think this could be a Nightmare or my original idea, Mephisto, as the villain scenario. I believe next week is going to be, this was the 2000s, it wasn't really the 90s. Malcolm in the Middle is 2000 to 2006, and a lot of the tropes here were single cam tropes, and single cam was a 2000s thing predominantly in sitcoms. So that would put us at 2010s next week. Now, 2010 is going to be The Office and Parks and Rec, and all of that stuff, which is really not convenient, they planned this for years, for us looking at mockumentary style stuff and being aware that we're on a TV show. So I think we're going to see Vision a lot more aware now that he's seen the outside. I think we're going to see, Pietro's obviously very aware of what's going on. We're going to see people in more of a mockumentary style next week. So my interpretation of the commercial was someone feeding off that, and that gives us one antagonist, Sword being the catalyst. I've seen some interpretations of like the children are only fueled by magic and they'll die outside of the dome. I personally didn't see it that way. People saying that it represented the draining quality of magic, like magic has a cost, like the Doctor Strange mentality. Personally, wasn't my interpretation. All of that being said, I could absolutely see that being used as well. I just personally see it as a Faustian deal with the devil. And so far, all of the shows have been about, all the commercials have been about a memory. Stark was a memory of the missile. Strucker was a memory of being manipulated as a miracle child. Lagos was a memory of that horrible trauma of wiping the blood away and using magic in that way. All of them are repressed memories. She wouldn't have a memory of her children dying because they're with her now. Like, she wouldn't have a memory of the future. So I think it's a memory, therefore I think it's a deal she made with the devil or with Nightmare or something of that level where magic is being sucked out of people and the devil representing the shark. I saw that as a very, a deal with the devil commercial. It's also the most haunting shit. I've always thought claymation could be very creepy. I always thought those commercials for Go-Gurt were very on the edge. Remember the Gushers commercials where her heads got huge and they fucking blew up? Commercials in the 2000s were terrifying. But let's get into my notes. So, the line Demon Spawn. Again, this to me is the Young Avengers opening. This is a huge moment in where everything's going to go. But the line Demon Spawn that Quicksilver yells at the children isn't just a joke, I don't think. I think that in the comic books, Mephisto has parts of his soul in these children. They are literally demon spawn. The devil in the details line is not to be discounted. Dottie was not in this episode. When we looked at all of the townspeople that are trapped, we've only cut away to one character inside the dome that was able to operate not around Wanda. We didn't cut to that character this episode. Dottie's the devil, I think. Also, Mephisto could be, and I've seen a lot of people arguing this, manipulating Quicksilver. The Quicksilver stuff is really interesting because Quicksilver remembers the Marvel narrative, but not correctly. When he talks about being shot down on the street like a chump, that's not what happened. He saved children. He saved Hawkeye. He was a hero. You'd remember that. He isn't acting like he actually remembers it. He notes that it's fuzzy. He talks about the lack of integrity in their memory. It's coming up while they're talking about like the accents and all those things. He's obviously drilling Wanda and trying to get information out of her the whole episode. So I think that, maybe someone's manipulating Quicksilver, but then we saw his body and it was the corpse of her brother as she remembered. So it's going to be really interesting to see if the body is a corpse, just like Vision's body is a corpse being manipulated. Who is giving those moments and those memories to this corpse? And how we perceive this as a Fox character. You don't cast someone from the Fox movies without tying in the multiverse, especially leading up to the Multiverse of Madness. So how we've got a pulled out of another universe Pietro implanted with memories of this universe's Pietro, but also memories that Wanda doesn't remember and things that are incorrect. The flashback, which very interestingly and confusingly had one of them dressed as, a Mantis type and one of them dressed as an Fury type. There's just going to be lots and lots of more questions. about Pietro. He was very much acting as an antagonist in this episode. There was something very off about him. He definitely knows too much and not enough simultaneously. So obviously all of that's going to come to play. I still think he's the Fox Pietro. I just think he's being manipulated by one of the antagonists that I opened the show talking about. Maybe my favorite line in this entire episode, and one of my favorite lines in this entire series, happened on this episode, where inexplicably the character said something was kick-ass, and Wanda said, kick-ass? That is the amount of life that led to that moment, the fact that both Pietros played in Kick-Ass, the fact that we now have the ability to reference it in an off-the-cuff remark because Disney owns it, the fact that they referenced something that they're both in to throw us off our trail, the fact that those actors were even cast together and then went on to go both play Pietros. The line Kick-Ass is such an amazing cosmic lining up of so many things, and I never saw it coming. That's just so many layers of meta, and I'm so happy with it. That moment, I just wrote down kick-ass in all caps. I think it's intentionally misleading. I think they're intentionally throwing a lot of stuff at us. I think they're intentionally aware of how crazy that cosmic coincidence is. I think all of it is delightful, very happy nerd. Comic book movies being referenced in comic book shows that are out of their universe, starring two of their characters that are both in and out of their universe while they both play the same character, and they both play the sister of a character that only exists in one universe while they both could have existed in both universes because of legal rights of them both being X-Men and Avengers simultaneously, and one can use one words and one can use others, and one can use powers this way and one use powers that way, and then them both being referenced at once in a show that one of them stars in is insane. I'm very happy. Next note. Dottie, I think, appears in the next episode. I think she very consciously wasn't in this one because they didn't want to give that away. But I do think we're going to be suspicious if Dottie is gone for too long. So I think she appears in the next episode, and I think by the end of the next episode, this is just a theory, a question is raised. I think in the next episode, there is something suspicious about Dottie, and then I think she probably goes away again and then comes back. So I think she's going to be there for the climax of the show. This was episode 6. So I'd imagine she comes back, questions are raised, and then she leaves again very suspiciously, and then we get the answer to what Dottie is in the finale. But that is how I think this all shapes out narratively, because I expected, I've been trying to plot this both as, the comic book references, but also the shape of the show is fascinating. It's going to be great we have the mockumentary stuff. That's why I think we skipped the 90s, is we needed the 2000s to be this episode, but that is really because we need the mockumentary stuff in 2010s to be the next episode. So I'm of the belief either the 90s didn't really get their time in the sun, or what if there's a series of flashbacks that lead to the 90s stuff that was going on in the town, or there's some sort of glitch in the dome. What if there's a glitch in the dome and that causes us to regress to the 90s within the context of the show? So either they don't touch on the 90s at all, or it's a narrative function to have the show have a bottle episode, take a breath, function in a different way. There's a lot of options with that time jump they did. So that intro was the single most nostalgic experience for me, and I cannot thank Marvel enough. It was perfect. That weird pop-punk soundtrack, the dialogue in that pop-punk soundtrack talks about how you'll never know who's going to show up. Things are a little off. They were able to put the creepiness of WandaVision into the pop-punk and still make it work narratively with the knock-in-the-middle flavor. Loved all of that. But they really leaned into this being 2000s because they also included on the marquee Parent Trap and The Incredibles. Now, those are obviously references to a family of superheroes, which is what this family is. It's Pietro and Wanda and Vision and the kids. They're a family of superheroes. And the other is a Parent Trap. Now, the Parent Trap one has layers. Parent Trap is about twins, which Wanda and Pietro are. Parent Trap is also about reuniting a family, putting a mom and a dad back together, which is why I'm thinking more and more that we get Magneto. Parent Trap is also a story that deals with like certain kind of hijinks with kids, which I think we're going to get in the next episode with the kids. But it's set in the 2000s. So Parent Trap and The Incredibles are carving out that this is a 2000 setting on that marquee, and I think they're also plot-based. And then the other thing that was on in this episode was it's Halloween, so they're watching a horror movie. Night of the Living Dead was what was playing, which is going to be obviously both Pietro and Vision in this case. So we are experiencing a Night of the Living Dead. The episode was about a night where the dead lived, and that was what was playing. Chef's kiss. Photon seems to be getting her powers from the dome. Monica Rambeau is So many superhero names. Monica Rambeau has a number of identities. She's been even called Captain Marvel, but Photon is what I think she's going to go by here, because it looks like, and that was what her mom's call sign was in Captain Marvel. Her mom, who we found out passed away in that one episode, was in Captain Marvel. Her daughter, we meet very young Monica Rambeau in Captain Marvel, now all grown up. I think she takes on the moniker of Photon in honor of her mom. Healing the grief, solving some of the trauma, fixing some of that is going to be her taking on that moniker. So it's going to give not only a cool superhero name, but a certain amount of closure of her being like, I love my mom, we fixed her shit. It's going to be really cool to see, but I do think she gets the powers from this back and forth in and out of the dome. I assume people are theorizing that the dome is going to cause mutants. I don't think so. I think the explosion of whatever happens causes the Fantastic Four because of cosmic radiation. I think the explosion of this outreach goes into space, and it might cause something with astronauts or aerospace engineers or Reed Richards, who I assume shows up in 2 episodes from now. But I don't think it's X-Men. I don't think that the dome is going to be an X-gene activator. And I've said from 2014 on that I wanted M of House. The idea being, instead of her saying no more mutants, Wanda says mutants. So the idea being that she activates the X gene. I think that happens through her causing multiverses to collide, and there is a universe where the X gene exists, where there's a multiverse option where X-Men exist, and they do collide with our world. So I do think she, in a roundabout way, causes mutants, but I don't think that Monica is the first mutant. I think Monica is going to be the only one that has as a superhero change, because she's the only one going back and forth in and out. She's done it twice, and that's causing it. I don't think it's just a one wave thing that causes mutation. That's why I think she's going to get powers, but everyone in the dome isn't. That would cause a lot of continuity issues. That would cause a lot of problems with storytelling. I do think Photon is going to get her powers from that. The glowing radiation on her tests, the blood tests, all of those things, I think that's going to cause Photon. But I do think we're going to build to mutants more slowly in another way. Near the end of the episode, they're driving to the person that's going to help them get in and out of the dome. I've thought that it was going to be either Reed Richards or Blue Marvel. I still think it's a little more likely that it's Reed than Blue Marvel. Blue Marvel would be dope, but the cosmic radiation, the fact that John Watts has already given us the Baxter Building in Spider-Man 2, the fact that we're getting the Fantastic Four as soon as we are, I think it's more important to plant a character so he can grow than necessarily give a character that will live in the show and be great. Blue Marvel's a fascinating character, but if you look at the way the Marvel Universe has done so well, it's because we get a character, and then the character shows up in another property and evolves. So imagine getting Reed Richards as a genius scientist in this show. That way, in 2 years, when we meet him and that catalyst happens with cosmic radiation, we're already more invested in the character. That said, I could easily see Blue Marvel being an element of Captain Marvel 2. I could easily see all of those things happening with that character to plant him here and have him grow later. So that's my money, is either on Reed Richards or Blue Marvel. I think when Pietro gets free of this reality, if that's the case, I think he'll remember his Fox memories. I think that he is the body of Fox Pietro, misremembering as Disney Pietro, and I think that Wanda put the image of him over him as the reverse of what he was saying. His rationale for looking like he was to not cause trauma. Like he rationalized him looking different so she didn't have a bad memory association. I think the bad memory association was her seeing Pietro shot as a like a PTSD adjacent kind of situation. Could be completely wrong about all that. The commercial. No parents in this commercial. I think the shark represents the devil. We've talked about the commercial a fair amount, so I'm not going to dive back into it. But I do think that is going to be the second to last commercial. I think we get one more. I'm wondering if it's Aaron Taylor Johnson, or I'm wondering if that's how we see the parents aren't the parents and the Parent Trap thing, bringing in Magneto and all that. But I think we get one more commercial next week, and then I think we're into our world, unless my crazy 90s flashback thing happens, and then we get one more 90s commercial, but time will tell. Billy is a reality manipulator like his mother, so it's interesting that he can see through the unreality of this. He was able to see outside the dome. He broke the fourth wall a lot. Tommy did a little bit because it was Malcolm in the Middle base, but it's interesting that Billy is able to kind of supplant her mom's powers. Like he's able to overcome it. And there's something in the X-Men about mutants not being able to use powers against family. Cyclops can't shoot his brother with an optic blast. It negates it. I think that's why Quicksilver and Wanda are kind of dancing around each other. I think that their powers don't really work in each other, and I think that's similar with Billy. I think that he's going to grow, when his powers fully mature, I think he's going to see right through all of Wanda's stuff, and I think we're seeing the seeds of that now. And maybe that is why Agnes is trying to age up the kids. Last week it looked like she was clearly trying to age up the children. Maybe she's trying to age up Billy so he can be powerful enough to stop his mom, and that's how she gets her freedom. I think that's true. I think that's what the motivation behind Agnes's being crazy on Agnes is. I think she's trying to age up Billy to escape the dome. Yeah, that's dope. When the dome expands, I love that they used like this cheesy malice, like she was upset with them, so she turned them into clowns. I love the hot air balloon, like a helicopter turned into a hot air balloon. I really enjoyed that, that like she was petty towards Sword, which further instills my thought that basically the Sword antagonism of Vision is the problem. I think Sword was trying to make Vision a weapon, and I think she hates them, and that's why she turned them into literal clowns. I think that Magneto moment we had in the last episode, I think she hates Sword, and that's why, you know, when the bubble expanded, it was so hilarious and malicious. I also think we would have had our very first, I think they were very clever to cover up the very first fuck in the Marvel Cinematic Universe by the moment Darcy would have said fuck, she got enveloped by the bubble, and then she became a sitcom character in the dome, so she couldn't say fuck, so she said fudge. I love the idea of her playing her Two Broke Girls character, and I don't think they can do that legally, but I think it'd be really funny if she was a waitress in a 2010 show the next week. Even if she was just dressed as a waitress, it'd be so funny if we had waitress Darcy, because we'd all know what that was referencing. Oh, final thought. Next week, this has expanded. The expansion of the dome means intervention. Whatever control there was over Westview, New Jersey is no longer there. They need to call in reinforcements, and any entity, whether it's S.H.I.E.L.D. or the Avengers or whoever government is still alive, AIM, whatever government entity is still watching, they're aware that this is expanded, so it's out of Hayward's control, which means Avengers? We're leading to the big fight. I think next week, with the expansion, the show also expands. I think the expansion of the dome means expansion of this reality, and I think that's going to be, I think next week's going to be crazy. And then I think that the next 3 episodes after that are going to be crazy.